Now, I wanted to talk about the album firstly. Innocence Is Kinky. It's been received so well, and much has been made about the subject matter. But I wanted to talk to you about the album from a compositional sense. There's you've combined performance art, drone, synth pop, and spoken word. Now that time has passed, how do you assess the album as a body of work?
Well, as kind of time passed after I released the album, I'm thinking of it more in a live sense now because I've played a lot of shows with the material, and so it's taken on a much more fluid form I think. Not so much like a collage work anymore, because there was a lot of production involved and a lot of different processes and different ways of using sound. Because some of the production ideas for the recording came from recording for a sound installation. For a while, as we were recording it, it still felt like it was kind of in between, I guess, and that it was a bit like cut up, a lot of editing and moving around really fast. But now in my mind, it's much calmer.
Do you feel, when you're forming new music, there can be a vulnerable aspect to it? Do you feel vulnerable when you're forming new music?
I feel vulnerable with all music as a listener too, and I'm very interested in that, especially at the moment with what I'm doing after this album. So, yeah, that's one of the main emotional aspect I like to bring out in a live show as well. Vulnerability, humility, and the kind of feeling of, I guess you could say intimacy, but you could also say intimacy in a more confronting way, like the uneasiness of intimacy.
Okay, and you had John Parish on board, excellent producer. You've described him as a one-man learning experience. And having him on board to sort of nurture the sound and lend his expertise, how much of an eye-opener was that, and how refreshing was it to work with someone like John to allow the album to come to life?
Well, it was first of all, it was amazing to have his ears involved and his gentle nature, because he was allowing us to do what we wanted, without a lot of judgment or trying to fit things into different genres. So he was a really interesting listener more than anything, I think, and he was also really interested in collaboration rather than separating the role of a producer from a role of a musician. So what we did this very much together. Yeah, it's like a band that forms by being involved with doing the music rather than somebody sitting over there and just telling you what to do. And then yeah, it's not like that at all. So it was very creative, and because he's a very polite but also very clever and guy and such a good listener, it was easy to kind of trust him, I think. So so that was one of the things that made the album so open, is just the fact that I and the other musicians trusted him.
Okay.
From the beginning.
You talk about, and you mention innocence being a real fetish in our culture, and exploring that on an emotional level. Did you feel compelled to cover this subject matter?
Well, it kind of started happening through working with other people, actually. I did a project with a Norwegian writer who was very interested in the Norwegian version of 16 and Pregnant, or like whatever they call these reality shows with young mothers. And they're kind of a depiction of class in a way, although the Norwegian version isn't, because we don't really have class in Norway. That is it's an interesting difference to hear, I guess. But through working with that and watching a lot of that, I just got really interested in a lot of TV and blogs and language and music marketed towards young women.
You know, the fascination with human voice is a fascination you have, and you know, your voice for the album was recorded very close to the microphone to give it an intimate feel. And do you feel you're sort of confronting the listener with moments of frankness with the way your voice is being used and the tones being used?
Yeah, I guess part of the album was recorded in a intimate way. Normally I actually don't record like that at all, and I don't sing like that live. I sing quite far away from the mic, and this is a thing that I've never been able to understand fully, that I'm very into the intimacy of closeness, but at the same time I'm also extremely dynamic, and so it's I actually usually perform quite far away from the mic, but with these lyrics, so it's something that is quite complex, I guess. I think intimacy can be sung from far away, which is why I'm so interested in playing live. And also when you're on stage, you're kind of too far away in comparison to the TV screen. And this moment here, when you're filming my face, you can never get this close in the same kind of flat way when I'm performing live. And so I really love live performance of music because it's so imperfect and it's therefore much more human than, you know, an up close and personal moment.
And do you like to reimagine and rework your live shows?
Absolutely. I like to. I rarely write set lists before I see the performance space, and I really try, especially when I'm on tour, I really try to always work with how I want to perform, so that I'm putting as much of myself and where I'm at into the performance, because I really want to performance to be really personal. And if I'm performing a set of songs that I don't feel connected to at the moment, it's just not going to be
does it tie
interesting
in?
for the audience, I think. So I'm trying to develop it with the space and even with the audience.
Okay. Does it tie in with the statement you made? You can never get close to anything if it doesn't have texture.
Yeah, absolutely. And and you can never get close to anything if there's no reverb, if there's no room and you don't feel any space, which is sometimes the same thing as texture. Like if there's no experience of space and a feel of you know, here and now, then it's very flat.
Let's talk about some of the album material. I Called, here's a song, it's a very infectious song and great output, but you stated this is a song that was formed through improvisation, and normally you would have got rid of this, but is your new way of working? Why was that?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I rewrote the lyrics completely. I work a lot with improv, and for this album it meant that I wrote a lot of songs that I normally wouldn't have considered for an album because they were too, trying to think of the word here, a little bit too free and leaning towards a more structured pop song. So that song in particular was very, like, it was me playing something that I would normally just do by myself. So yeah, but I still rewrote the lyrics. Haha, nobody will ever know what the song was originally about. Yeah.
I also wanted to get your views on Death of the Author. You know, it's such a well-structured song and so well layered. You know, when you're arranging a song like this from a compositional sense, you know, what kind of mood and aura are you looking to create? What are the origins of the song itself?
Leonard Cohen's Who by Fire.
I understand whilst you've been in the UK, you passed pass by Battle Dykes on your way to Aberdeen.
Yeah, that's true.
And what's intrigued you whilst you've been in the UK? You know, have you had time to kind of take it all in? Anything that's kind of really stuck out that you've really kind of resonates with you, perhaps?
Well, it's a very special time for me to be passing through the UK at the moment, because I've just spent 3 months in America, and that's been really interesting. And then coming back here was coming back to Europe. But I do find that the UK has a certain type of dirtiness to it. Maybe I'm infused with the history, the very kind of dirty history and imperialism. But yeah, it's a nice return to something something really old and dirty compared to America, with all these incredibly glossy surfaces, so many places. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I keep thinking that this is a place where I haven't really followed the economy lately, but I do know that it's kind of going through, or went through, this recession that we didn't really experience in Norway that much. We kind of managed to stay away, but here it was really tough. Yeah, so it's interesting. And of course we arrived also with the EU election in the middle of that. That was interesting too.
Okay. And I've read that being a fan of Lush single-handedly made you want to speak English with a British accent.
Yes, and I learned all my French from Stereolab.
If you could go back in time to see one performance, who would it be?
I mean, there are many artists I would have liked to see before they got famous, but no, I think I would have liked to see Annette Peacock. I mean, almost any performance would have been good. Maybe in the 70s, that would have been really good. But that's not, one specific performance. I'm not a big enough nerd. I remember you talked about Lush, and there was when I was like 15, I think I could have killed to see them. So maybe I should have done that. Not killed, but yeah, they broke up when I was quite young.
Final words of wisdom, Jenny?
Yeah, I remember quite vividly getting this advice from a teacher in high school, that no matter how bad your performance was, if you took a bow very elegantly after the performance, the audience would love you anyway. And then I remember getting advice that you should never talk your work down. But I think that advice inspired me more to do the opposite, to kind of, because I'm very interested in vulnerability and even self-doubt. That's kind of been very important for me, because that makes me think like a philosopher. You wonder. And so that advice I've never been able to listen to, but it's made me write all my music.
Okay.
Doubting. Always doubt yourself. That's great.